Hello and welcome to The Last Word, the podcast from Ordinary Hero, where we bring honest, powerful conversations to the forefront with people quietly shaping extraordinary impact across our industry and beyond. Now, today's guest is a woman at the very heart of Ordinary Hero, founder, leader, creator, strategist, and the driving force behind nearly 2 decades of transformation. As we record this episode from a very special place, the original sofa where it all began, I'd like to say the OGs of OGs. The sofa where she took the call back in 2008 from James Thornton at C&IT Magazine that sparked a new beginning, and the birth of Heather Robinson Live Communications. Today, as we relaunch, rebrand and step into a bold new chapter as Ordinary Hero, it's time to hear her story, in which she's been avoiding for many months. But the history, the grit, the philosophy, the lessons, and what's coming next. So whether you're an event professional, entrepreneur, or simply someone curious about what it takes to build and sustain an award-winning agency, this episode is for you. Welcome to The Last Word In, and welcome to the show, Heather.
Thank you, Denise.
You're very welcome.
That was another stupendous welcome. Thank you.
Right, so we're going to kick off because I think it's time. And like I say, you've been hiding from me for a very long time. So where it all began. So let's start at the very beginning. And before the agency, the brand, the sofa stories, this year marks 17 years of your agency. So before we talk about that milestone, let's get to know you, the journey, the spark, the drive. So I'm going to kick off with a few questions. So how did you first find your way into the wondrous world of events?
Gosh, okay. Well, my background was actually kind of Amdram, theatre, TV, film, and I studied all of those at university. Which was a great course, a sort of 4-year course with lots of actual experience with people like the BBC, Palace Pictures, which was fantastic. So that was my background, and I wanted to sort of pursue, probably not theatre, because I worked out that was really, really bad hours and not brilliant pay. And then I thought I'd go into telly, but it was at the time when the franchises were all happening, so it was all quite difficult. And then I discovered something called business theatre, as it was called at the time, which is basically corporate events. And it was at a time when there was lots of exciting things happening, and there were the big players like Imagination and HPICM and Park Ave, I think it was Park Ave, I think. And all these sort of big names and all these exciting things happening all over the world. So that all looked very exciting. So I managed to get a job at HPICM in 5th Street in Soho. And it was a whole new world of exciting, experiential travel, different things, different cultures, different experiences, private viewings at the Sistine Chapel, huge conferences, big product launches of cars, and it just, as it said, business theatre. It was the kind of everything rolled into one, really. So that's where it began.
And then what was the moment that you realised that the industry was for you? So you were there,
yeah.
You saw all these amazing things. Is that when that light bulb of love got switched on?
Yeah, I think because I think it encapsulated all the different elements of everything I loved. So the creativity, the sort of the stagecraft, the drama, the theatre of it all, and the sort of TV side as well, with things like the corporate video side of things and the sort of, not just the live event stuff, but the pre-recorded stuff that all sort of came together in this multimedia experience. I mean, it was a bit different then because we were still on 35mm slides, that's right. So it was not the age of PowerPoint at that time. It was a very different environment at that point, but it was a great, really exciting sort of learning period. And it was a time when sort of, it was just budgets were different, which is a big thing to sort of talk about. People were investing heavily in this sort of excitement because it was sort of in the 90s, so there was a bit of money about, and it was all very sort of exciting in that way. But it just brought the whole thing together, basically, but also with the strategic side. So my business brain, my sort of that side of things was excited too, because it was about how you interpreted key messages and then brought them to life in an environment that sort of supported what you were trying to communicate, really. So it carried on that spark of all my background experience of theatre and theatre direction and staging and all that sort of stuff into a commercial environment, really.
And then the one strapline, your ethos is the do one thing well, which completely buy into. But where did that originate from you, for you personally?
So it's actually a Steve Jobs quote. A friend of mine mentioned it to me and it just really resonated. The do one thing well for me really encapsulated what it was that we were trying to sort of create as a business, really, which was that we wanted to surround ourselves with experts, people that are brilliant at what they do. And we, from experience, and you and I both come from full service agencies, you can have all of that in-house, but sometimes the really, really good people are actually outside the business. And if you've got people sitting in the business, you've got to use them. But if you've got them outside of the business, you can get the right people on the right job. And that means that you're not carrying unnecessary overhead when you don't need it. But it also means that you can afford to get the best of the best when you do need it. So this idea of sort of do one thing well, for us as an agency, what we do well is we provide that kind of linchpin, that core ownership, that lead agency sort of ethos, and we get all the other people that do one thing well to come on board when we need them. So it's really sort of stuck from there,
Make
really.
the team, yeah. So, okay, we've been in this industry a very long time, you longer than me, but still a long time. And it's been wild and wacky and everything else in between. But what still excites you about this very intense, unpredictable, yet wonderful industry?
I think it's changing really quickly, and it has done in all the many years that you and I have both been in this industry, and as you say, slightly longer, but it's evolved massively, not just sort of technically, with the sort of advent of hybrid, which of course, used to be called webcasting, but anyway, hybrid, but also the kind of, the audiences have got a lot more sophisticated. You've got to work with audiences that have a much shorter attention span, that have a kind of multifaceted or an ability to take a multifaceted kind of communication, and they want a much more experiential. Everyone uses the word experiential now, but because everything it's a very 3D environment at all times that they experience. So that's what they demand as an audience now. So you've kind of got to move with it, which is challenging. And is also sometimes is prohibited by cost or by practicalities or whatever it might be. So it's about how you can be clever with this all always in mind, the end customer, the audience, basically. So that bit's still evolving, and I think will continue to do so. And I think the world's got smaller, I think, from the travel side.
Definitely.
So I think we've got to be mindful of that, whether it's weather, whether it's political unrest, whether it's terrorism, all of the above has now got to become part of the mix when you're considering where you're going and what you're doing when you get there and that sort of stuff. So it's a fast moving industry, and it's making sure, and again, this is why having this external input from this wealth of talent that we employ is great, because you're always picking up learnings along the way, and people have experienced things in other areas, in other businesses, in other industries, and they bring it all back into the melting pot, which means that we're hopefully always at that front leading edge.
Definitely. So we're going to move on to the birth and now the rebirth, which is super exciting. So from personal beginnings to now the beginning of a business, but obviously a reshaped business and a new look. So 17 years is a huge milestone. And so from personally, well done you, because obviously it's been some rocky times, from, crazy ash clouds through to pandemics and everything else. So the story of behind the agency and, is iconic, really. So talk us through, you're sitting on the infamous sofa. So talk us through this call and the leap of faith that you had in yourself, because I love this story and I've been wanting for you to share it for such a long time. So now I've got you here. So tell us about that.
The smoke and mirrors behind
And the PJs.
behind how you set up a business. This is probably not going to make it into the Harvard Business School, how to set up a business. But it's probably quite quite indicative of me as a person. So you and I both come from big, large full service agencies, and I was working at my third at the time, a group which is no longer, which is THA Group. And I was a board director there and had been for a number of years, and we were hurtling towards the recession of 2008. And I just felt that it was, I felt that everything was kind of, it was coming to the perfect storm. You could see it, and we worked with a lot of businesses like automotive and the building trade and this sort of thing, and things that were going to get hit pretty hard. And I had some concerns about large full service agencies that were going to be very expensive to maintain during this period. And I just felt that I didn't really support that model going forward. So I thought I couldn't really stay as a board director if that was the case. So I resigned from THA Group and thought I'm just going to take some time out. I'd never had any time out. And I thought I'm going to take some time out and decide sort of, you know, perhaps where I might want to go next, who I might want to sort of see about working with, that kind of thing. And I thought, in the meantime, I'm going to sit on the sofa, this sofa, and watch This Morning for a couple of days and just have a bit of downtime, because I'd just come out of a last big job for them, and which was a big motor show event, and hadn't had any time to think about anything. So it was like, brilliant, this is my time. I'm just going to sit quietly. So I'm sitting on said sofa in my pyjamas watching This Morning. I think it was Richard and Judy at that point, and the phone rang, and it was C&IT Magazine, and James Thornton rang me. I'd met James a number of times at various events. He was one of the journos there at the time, and he said, "Oh, I hear you've left THA," and I was like, "Oh gosh, yes, I have actually." And he said, "I hear you've set up your own agency," and I was like, "Really?" And he said, "Yep, I hear you've set up your own agency. You know, who's coming with you? Which clients are you taking with you? You know, what are you doing about it all? What's all this?" So I'm sitting there thinking, well, this is brand new information, and I wasn't aware I was setting up a new agency, but in typical think on your feet kind of, as we all do in this industry, you kind of go, no, that's absolutely right. Yeah, that's right. I've set up my own agency, and no, I'm not taking any, you know, team with me because it's, you know, it isn't blah, and which clients, well, you know, not sort of announcing any of that just yet. We're just going to see how it all pans out. So what's it called? I'm sorry, what? What's it called? Right. So I thought about it and thought, well, the only thing I've actually got to sell is me, so best to put my name in it. So I said, so it's Heather Robinson. And I thought, what do we do? Well, we do live. And what do we do? Well, it's not just live events, it's the comms around it. So it's Heather Robinson Live Communications. So there it was, and it was great. That's the name of it. It's born. That is now what we're calling the agency. So that came out pretty quick. And then, so I was like, brilliant, okay. So we got through the interview, not quite sure how. And got to the end of it, and he said, okay, that's brilliant. So I just need a photo now, because we're going to press this afternoon. It was time when we still went to press. We're going to press this afternoon. I need it pretty quick, because the only ones we've got of you are at awards and with the rest of the board, so we need just one of you. So I was like, okay, that's fine. Now, obviously, this is a long time ago, so no mobile phones, no cameras on phones, no nothing. So I got my little Canon camera out with this little self-timer, and propped it up on my toaster in my kitchen, because that was the cleanest white wall I had that looked a bit officey. Pointed it at said white wall, put a jacket on over my pyjamas, put some lipstick on, stood against the wall, a little bit startled, a bit like rabbit in the headlights, took my selfie, emailed it off to James, and Heather Robinson Live Communications was born. So yes, like I say, it's not going to make Harvard Business School, but there we are.
But what were those early days like? Because obviously that's a big, huge leap. And, you know, it's no mean feat really to leap off. And obviously, for those entrepreneurs who are listening, or for those who are, wanting to do something, I think you have to back yourself. And like you say, the only thing that you had to sell was yourself. And you knew you were good, you'd reached board status, etc. But, what were those early days like when because you are you yourself and I, your finance, your IT, your, everything else, and cleaner, and, it's a big deal, as well as going out, pushing sales, and, getting that first client to trust you as you.
Yeah, it was a bit different. I'd never been freelance, so I'd never worked for myself. I'd always had a salary, and I'd always had a big machine behind me. So it was slightly unnerving, well, very unnerving, to suddenly think, right, okay, best we crack on. So funnily enough, I went to a seminar about business leaders, which actually was a real turning point for me, because it was people that had just set up on their own. And I sat there feeling very grown up, thinking, I actually know what I'm doing. And he said, you do realise you're now all completely unemployable because you've worked for yourself. And it suddenly hits you then. You go, okay, so right, well, this is real now. So I kind of just had to knuckle down and start to try and plot, which clients I wanted to sort of work with. I partnered with a lot of people at the time, so it helped to sort of make that transition to start to get some credibility as my own agency. It helped get some money behind me. I had a lot of support from suppliers, which was, really, I was always grateful for, because they gave me credit terms, which took some confidence. So I felt I owed a lot to a lot of people who kind of helped me on my way. And they always say it's a really good time to start a business in a recession, because everywhere around there was lots of businesses kind of crumbling, and these massive monolithic huge agencies which kind of come in waves, where everyone buys everything up, and we're going through a bit of that at the moment again, where everyone's getting bought up and getting these massive huge great agencies, and then they all kind of implode on themselves, or all the good people leave, and you get sort of this huge overhead with so anyway, all of that was happening, which actually worked in my favour, because they wanted small and agile. So that's where we came in.
You fitted in nicely. So how does the original story connect with where you are now? So stepping into that rebrand and the new era of Ordinary Hero.
It's never just been me, and I think that was probably, as I say, I had nothing else to sell at the time, which is why I had to get my name on it. But it kind of it made us feel smaller than we were as an operation, and I think that went against us. So the story of where Hero came from happened actually in a rebrand in 2015, but the timing wasn't right, and it was just kind of how to sort of position ourselves so that we weren't just Heather Robinson. I think for the last probably 10 years, well, probably slightly longer actually, maybe sort of 10 to 15 years, people refer to Heather Robinson as the agency. It's not about me at all, because it's not me that delivers, the vast majority of it. We have a lot of people that do that. But it's kind of the next step, really, just to sort of recognise that it's not just a single name. It's a team of experts doing what they do, really.
So we like to say that, it's small but perfectly formed, and I think, we'll talk about how you chose your agency model. You've covered it slightly in the intro, but I think let's break it apart, because I think, there's some questions over it, because obviously, like you say, you and I have come from large, big agencies where, you've got rafts of people, floors of people, and that's not you, and that's never been you. So I think it's good to unpick what that means. So for any clients, prospects, or people who don't understand why, and the driving force behind, because obviously it is deliberately lean, it is expertly crafted, as you've said, because you're bringing in those people who are, you know, like you say, freelance but working for other people, bringing the goodness back and never getting stale, because, you know, in this industry you can get fatigued really quickly. So to do what you love for various other, you know, agencies and then bringing it back, and you're just bringing the best self every single time. And I don't think anybody employed can do that. Hand on heart, I don't think you can. So from you know, I think let's just break it apart from that traditional agency structure. And like I say, some call it brave, unconventional, some just don't understand. So talk us through why you chose this model rather than that typical agency of employing everybody.
I think it was commercial. It was a real commercial decision. And actually, having worked in 3 large agencies, of which 2 went under, 1 was bought out, it was a model that was too expensive to kind of to continue effectively. And I think I just felt like I was watching a number of really sort of talented people get trained up in the business and then leave. So you're always bringing up new, which is great. I'm all about supporting the you know, newcomers to the industry, but it just felt like all the good people were going freelance or setting up kind of, you know, their own little thing or whatever it might be, because that's what they were happy doing. And I think particularly in the creative industry, people don't like to be confined. It's much more about being fluid and being your own kind of timekeeper and your own boss. You know, you don't come into this industry for short hours and you know,
9 to
huge
5
salaries and there's none of that. You're in this industry because it's vocational. You love it. You want to do your best. You want to do a great job. So you don't need to stamp a timesheet for that, because you know you're going to do the job as best you can. So it doesn't. The model doesn't really, or the traditional model, it doesn't really suit, I don't think, a vast number of people. So it was deliberate in that way, just to harness the great people, and they're all the same people. They're all the same people I've been working with in my extremely long career. I mean, I'm still working with people I've known for 30 years who I worked with full time, and then they went freelance, and now they work for us. And it's because they're great at what they do. So for me, it wasn't a concern. It's a really mature talent pool. It's a really well-managed market, and it's about managing sort of timing to make sure that you can get the people that you want. And if it's regular work, that's a bit easier. If it's not regular work, you kind of try and make it so that people get the same people all the time. But that's the same if they're in-house or not. Because people go on holiday or have babies or, you know, are on a different project. It happens in-house or freelance. It doesn't seem to matter. It's about how you manage it as a business. And that's where we provide the structure, if you like. So we are that point of ownership. We are that point of management of all of that side of it, and that point of leadership. So I have no concerns on that. And I think it's really interesting, as you say, it's a non-traditional model. I think it's one that a lot of agencies have moved more towards because of cost and overhead, apart from a few which are just doing this, and it'll be really interesting to see how that pans out. Because as you say, I think there's there's the chance that sometimes it gets a bit stale, it gets caught up in politics and kind of infrastructure, and more about the running of this massive monolithic business than it is about the creativity. And I think that's the bit for me that always used to get a bit sort of lost. Everyone was so busy being managers, they weren't actually doing what they were really good at.
And then it just switches people off and then they leave anyway. Because they're not doing what they love. Like you say, this is such a fluid industry for people who just, I mean, you know, dare I say it, they fit in a different box, you know, in a different box. Like, you know, you've got your finance team, they're financy people, or you've got your IT team, but because they love what they do, they're specialists at what they do. Whereas we're specialists at being just completely fluid and creative and, you know, thinking outside the box. We're problem solvers at the end of the day. And we bring things to life. Yeah, exactly. And I think it just suits people who just do not conform to a 9 till 5.
I call us the circus people of the business world, and I think you know, we are that kind of transitional, always moving, always kind of looking for the next whatever it is. And you know, the other thing I think is a really interesting point. People talk about team building. I say, if you want to see what good team building is, put an event team together, because they'll come together and in 24 hours they will be working absolutely like clockwork.
Yeah.
They'll put on an amazing event and then they'll all walk away and they'll be, you know, touch wood, no drama, no kind of issues of kind of hierarchy. Everyone just knows their job. They're brilliant at what they do, and they all know where they fit. So it just happens. So it's like that model, but within the business itself.
And why wouldn't you want a business that ran like that? Because that's harmonious, right? So the challenges that come with the approach, because it's not always plain sailing, let's be honest. So what are your challenges that you face with this model?
More governmental, actually. It's about making sure that all the paperwork's in the right place for, you know, IR35 and all this sort of stuff. But, you know, we work with our partners, and they are partners, to make sure, you know, they're all insured. We train them on things like health and safety and first aid and stuff, and we try and kind of help support in that way with our regulars as well. Most of them will do them themselves anyway, but, you know, we try and sort of scoop that side of it up as well, because it's important for us as well. But I think it's a model that's more and more coming to the fore. Interestingly, I was talking to our solicitor the other day, and he was saying to me that, because we were talking about the model, funnily enough, and he was saying he had come across the solicitors that was now using the same model as us with freelancers, and he was saying he was wondering how that was going to work, because it was something that they were interested in looking at, because of cost, because of overhead, because of all the, you know, it's so expensive to employ now. It's becoming more and more difficult to actually, you know, make it work. So when solicitors are starting to do it, you kind of go, well, it's a model that works.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you have any pushback from clients? Do they not understand it? Is
Sometimes.
that a hurdle?
Yeah. So, and they tend to be the more traditional clients. So sort of finance, and that, because it's very alien to them as a kind of business industry. It's very kind of, oh, this doesn't fit into a box, so it becomes a little bit more challenging in that way. But, you know, hopefully they'll start to come on board with it a little more. And, you know, the ones that really embrace it, we've got sort of long-standing clients that have worked with us from day one, and they tend to be kind of more tech and comms based, a similar sort of profile basically, and obviously the automotive side as well, which is very fast moving. So it's, interesting. I think it tends to be more industry led though.
Cool, okie dokie. So, I mean, in the summary, it's kind of a bit of a bonsai tree then, really. Small but perfectly formed.
That's what we aim for.
Yes.
We aim for small and perfectly formed.
Excellent. Right, so we're going to talk about finance, because, again, this is part of your business model, and definitely the unsung hero, because, you know, it is behind the scenes for sure. And we spoke recently with Nikki, our commercial and business operations lead, about the vital role that finance plays. And unlike many agencies, you believe that finance should be at the table from the off. So why do you think, and tell the audience really, why you think that is so important to have finance, because you think finance is like chalk, you know, and a creative process is like chalk and cheese. Nikki does break the mold because she is very different, but it's been led by you in terms of getting her around the table and getting the finance function around the table to explore more, and be present from when that brief hits. And so why that?
I think budget is such a fundamental part of the brief that why would it not be, I guess, is the answer to that question. And I think we push our clients a lot of the time to get some sort of guidance on budget, and we recognise procurement don't like to do that, but it's a bit of a nonsense, because, as we all know, how long's a piece of string? Even if you just give us a guide, it gives us something to work towards. So, and our aim is not just to spend every penny, but just to make sure that we're giving the best value for money within what that money pot looks like. So all of that means that finance is a fundamental part of the brief, and then answering the brief. So once you kind of get that as a mindset, it's then about how you maintain that throughout the life of a project. So we work really hard, and Nikki and the finance team particularly, to make sure that we address it with the client at the front end, how they want it to be reported, when, how often they need reporting, so we can always give them kind of dynamic updates on budgets. And that's one side of it, but then there's all this sort of attrition side and the management of supplier and payment schedules and all this sort of stuff, because I think one thing that woke a lot of people up, clients and agencies, was COVID, because all of a sudden everything got cancelled, and the cancellation and attrition, which had been, suitable for that, was suddenly a lot more, needed to be a lot more robust because of the sort of, the non-warning of this kind of thing. So I think it focused certainly procurement and clients' minds a lot more, and therefore we needed to make sure that we were fully behind that as well. So throughout the throughout the life of a project, the finance team will be involved, so that they are fully up to speed on the project and therefore able to report accordingly, so the clients can make dynamic decisions. Should anything change, or should money become available, or whatever it might be, they are always able to then go, okay, well, we know where we are, we can make this decision quickly.
Because the question, you've kind of just answered it really, to the point of, how does that benefit the client? But equally, we look at that money as our own, so you're not going to be frivolous with that.
No.
And we also know our jobs well, so we've talked about bringing in that talent pool. They've been managing budgets for an eternity, as it were. So I think from that perspective, there's lots of benefits to the client. Is there anything outside of that you want to add in terms of that benefit?
I think it's about trust, really, and I think a lot of the stakeholders get that. Sometimes procurement less so, because they have a different brief, they have a different remit. But the bottom line is if there's an open and honest discussion about budget, everyone knows what they're working with. And I think it means that we can all work hard to make the budget work as hard as it needs to do, because, budgets are much smaller, much tighter. And it's about being creative in how you use the budget when, and this is where we as a business will advise where not to waste money as we see it. They're buying us in as the experts. We think, don't invest it here, invest it over here. And those sorts of conversations can only happen when you've got really good visibility of where the budget and the finances sit. So that's why they're always involved right the way through the project.
How do you feel that sets us apart from other main agencies? Because it is very different. Like you say, we would never have imagined of hoiking in Mike from finance or Sue from finance back in our days. Do you know what I mean? So it's different, but also Nikki's not just a one-trick pony, is she? She's finance and's got very much our eyes on the prize, as it were. But she goes above and beyond in terms of looking wider, going out from a sustainable point of view, and then driving that from an operations point of view. So
absolutely,
you heading up the operations, and then that feeding into the wider team.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. All of those facets of sustainability or making sure that we are compliant all sits under Nikki and her team as well. So all of that kind of builds into everything that we're talking about, from the kind of commercial role, the business operational role. Yeah. So that is well, it's robust for a start for the client, from the client side, but it makes us also competitive, because we were very quick on the mark with things like EcoVadis, making sure that we were sort of where we needed to be with that, and we continue to sort of drive that side of things forward as well. And all of that also drives the finance side as well, because if we're looking at sustainable stuff, then it usually has a slightly higher price tag. So having all that information to hand and underpinned with whether it's carbon offsetting, etc., is really important to help set us apart from other agencies. Yeah. Because
and we're small enough to care, and I think that's
absolutely right.
That's a big difference, isn't it? Because there's lots of big agencies out there, and we're not knocking that, because their model works for them, but sometimes that personal approach definitely gets lost.
Yeah, for sure. And the clients know they can pick up the phone to Nikki or to Ella in the team and have a conversation with them about exactly that. They don't need to come through myself or with the account person or the operational person, they can go direct. And you know, all of that means it's a much more symbiotic relationship.
Yeah.
And everyone's working with the same goal in mind.
Yeah, because also, you know, we know we drown daily in
Email.
comms. Yeah, you know, and not only your personal, you know, I've got 10,000 I need to clear it for Christmas, right? But, you know, you are drowning in comms. So I think the comfort of picking up a phone to go, Nikki, can you just help me? Or, you know, I think it's really important to just have that direct line, because you know, it's a lot faster to get to the answer, right? So
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Right, so I'm going to have a little bit of a fun moment with you now. 17 years brings a lot of stories, I'm sure. So let's talk about some unforgettable ones. So what has been your most memorable moment, good, bad, or utterly surprising? Have you got one?
I think going to Azerbaijan quite early on in its lifetime with BP was interesting, because we had to have kidnap training. I do remember that. I remember not telling my mother that part, so that was quite interesting. And then sort of getting stopped for taking photos of the venue, because I don't know why, but he had a gun, so I stopped. So that was things like that are slightly more challenging things that I've had to do. Highlights would be Sir David Attenborough. I mean, we get to meet some good, some bad, and some very ugly famous people in this business, as we all know. But he was a special one. Especially when I was asked by the presenter, who I can't actually remember the name of now, to introduce her to him, which was a slightly surreal moment. But I did get a cuddle from him, so that was a high point for me.
Running an agency isn't easy. It's not glamorous behind the scenes, as we know. Toughest moments often shape us, and so has there been, or you know, what has been the biggest disappointment or challenge that you faced through the 17 years of sofa to back on the sofa 17 years later?
I think COVID was a real wake-up call for everybody, personally and commercially, and you know, obviously it was unprecedented for everybody. And I think you know, there were some industries that were, you know, actually saving lives, like we know with the NHS, etc. And I think the hospitality and events industry, along with many others, obviously, got hit incredibly hard. It was extremely difficult to navigate. And we wanted to make sure as a business that we were as fair as we could be to our partners and freelancers. We had obviously a huge number of projects and events in the pipeline in various stages of pre-production, and all of that had to be, well, we already thought it was going to last 6 months, didn't we? So we moved several projects, I think 3 times. So that was hard going, really hard going. Because
and really, we've only just come out of that. Let's be honest.
We're still recovering. As a business, we're still recovering.
Yeah. But in terms of that client trust of, you know, getting people in rooms and whatnot, you know, I think there's still been some overhang, even in 20. You know, we're in 25. Well, we're end of 25 now. So you know, but 24 still had a little bit of a cloud against it. But I think I definitely think we're coming out of that, and you know, there is more, you know, energy into,
and people are loving being back together.
Yeah.
And I think that was the thing that became clear really quick. I remember our very first event, live event, as opposed to, you know, hybrid, afterwards, where we actually got everyone back in the room with tests, with all the paraphernalia around it, and people were just beside themselves to actually be reconnecting. Because the good thing that came out of COVID is not everyone has to go to a million meetings, travelling all the time. We all do it on Teams, which has pluses and minuses, but from a economic and environmental perspective, obviously it's much better than jumping on a plane. So there's positives, but you know, that face-to-face you can't beat, there's no doubt about it. And hybrids do still have their place, clearly, but that whole, you know, we're human, we like human touch, and that you know, it's been so nice to start to see that come back, and I think everyone agrees on that. As an industry, I think we're still massively recovering. I think we lost some great people. A lot of people left the industry because there wasn't any work, and you know, and I think they realised that it was so unstable. So I think that was a real loss for everybody. And as I say, it was that was the biggest hurdle for sure.
And has anyone ever truly let you down along your journey?
I think it's a shame when there's a certain amount of disappointment when loyalty between sort of whether it's suppliers or indeed clients as well can be a bit of a challenge. There's no doubt about it, and it's a shame because it's still quite a small industry in that way, that you know word gets around, and so it's always a shame when that happens. And I think you just have to sort of brush it away, move on, and just work with people that have the same values and the same kind of outlook on how they work and how they want to work, and mutual respect for me is a really big thing. So I think it's about being fair, doing a fair job for a fair price, and that's both us for our clients, and also our partners for us. So we try and maintain that as much as we can, and that's why I say when things like COVID happens, we try and make sure that, you know, where cancellation was available, we shared, we didn't sort of retain, and to make sure that we tried to support everybody, because you know it is our extended team. Our third party partners and freelancers are our extended team, so they're part of who we are, they're part of the family, they're part of the business. So we try and maintain that as we go as well.
And has there been a recurring challenge that still frustrates you?
I think pitching is the recurring challenge, and I think procurement, whilst necessary, I think is another layer within that pitching process, which is just it's exhausting as a business, because it's always so concentrated, the periods of time and all the rest of it, and B, sometimes it's a level playing field, sometimes it doesn't feel like it is, so that can be quite frustrating. It's an enormous amount of time, effort and cost that goes into the pitching from all the agencies involved. So if you've got 4, then that's 4 companies doing it. If you've got 10, that's 10 companies. And if you actually add up all those man hours and time and investment and all the rest of it, it's an enormous number. And I still hark back to, you know, the best pitch ever. I did a piece on it many years ago now, which was doing a birthday party for BBH ad agency. And I still hold that one up as the ultimate brief and the ultimate pitch scenario, because they were an agency, they understood it. So, you know, they invested the time doing the online research. They invested the time going to do chemistry meetings with the agencies that they had identified they wanted to work with. They narrowed it down then to 3 agencies, and all they did was give quite a sort of high level brief to go basically, you know, where do you suggest that we can go to hit this number? That was it, because they wanted to work on the creative, because they were a creative agency, and they also knew that it would be a much more collaborative and much more focused solution if we did it together. So that process was much lower impact on the agencies they got involved financially and time-wise, with a much better outcome. So you kind of sit there going, well, that's a great model. You know, if it's just about rate card, then just ask for a rate card. If it's about creative, you're going to get a much better solution working together. You can see what they've done before, so you have an idea of you know what they might be able to offer. So it's just being a bit mindful of that. And I understand big investment, there is a requirement to do pitches, but it's about being mindful of that process.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously many year of ups, downs, and as you say, COVID and client frustrations, be it pitches or budget months or whatever it might be. How do you stay resilient through it all? Because what still gets you up in the morning?
I think, as we said, we all love what we do, and there's something quite terrifying, but there's also some quite exciting about a blank piece of paper. So when that brief lands, whether it's one of the dreaded pitches or whether it's a brief for an actual job, you've got, you know, a whole blank piece of paper and a little pot of money and a set of objectives or ambitions that you've got to make it all fit. So there's something quite exciting about going, oh, what about, oh, I've seen this, or what was that about? All these kind of things that come into the melting pot, and then you go, oh, what about this? And then you create something as a business, as a team of individuals that come together to create something that's, you know, robust, creative, imaginative, on budget, all of these things, and that is going to actually have an effect. So that's why we still do it.
So we're going to move on to the rebrand. So we're going to introduce the ordinary hero and get behind the big moment, because it is massive and you know, something definitely worth celebrating. But it's more than just a new name. It's definitely an evolution. It's a sharpening. It's a clear reflection of who the agency has become, because you've honed that for, you know, this nearly 2 decades. So where did the name Ordinary Hero come from?
So, another great story. Well, interesting story, I think, anyway. There was the brand FC UK, for those that were around in the 80s and 90s, suddenly arrived on the scene, and there's a great story behind it, which was there was a proper madman advertising guy in the 80s. I can't actually remember his name. I'm terrible with names. Everyone will know this. But he was kind of one of the mavericks of the time who came up with some of the really well-known slogans of the 80s and 90s. And he was on the French Connection account, and he went over to their Hong Kong office, and apparently a fax came through. It's that old. And on the fax there was the shortened thing that it was for the FCHK office, because of the Hong Kong office. And he allegedly saw this and thought, that's quite interesting, with a little bit of jiggery pokery. FC UK, hilarious, really kind of groundbreaking, tongue-in-cheek, all of those sorts of things. What a great concept. Hence FC UK was born. I think that's a great story. I think it's a really nice story. In a slightly smaller world, 15 years ago, no, not 15 years ago, in 2015, I was desperately trying to shorten the name, Heather Robinson Live Communications, that had fallen out of my mouth in 2008. And we were rebranding just as Heather Robinson. So we'd had the logo done, and we had the invoice come through, and the invoice came through, and our account name was obviously Heather Robinson Limited, but the account short name, which all good finance people will know, was HERO, HE-RO, Hero. And you know, when you look at something, you go, I've never realised that about my name being shortened to HERO, and it's kind of waving at me. And it's like, that's a really interesting name. So we've just done a rebrand, and I'm like, no, it's not about capes, and you know, it's not about saving the world, and it's none of that, and it just didn't feel appropriate. But it planted that little seed where you just kind of go, oh, it's somewhere in the back there. So anyway, Heather Robinson lived for the next 10 years, scarily, and we were just sort of coming up to our 17th birthday on the 17th of December, and we were thinking, well, it just felt time. It felt like a coming of age and more to sort of move things forward. And I was just aware of what we talked about earlier, about the fact that it's not just about me, it's a much bigger thing. It's all these other great people doing great stuff. And so, but we wanted to carry on the story of the agency, where it's come from. And we started to take more of a kind of role of lead agency, and it was becoming much more of an adopted model, the one that we have as a business, where clients will buy us in as lead agency, and with a number of different elements that we offer as a full service agency. So they might buy us for all of it, you know, logistics, production, creative, all of it, or they might just buy us for logistics, or they might just buy us for production, or whatever it might be. So, but this lead agency role, this project lead. So it started to feel the right sort of time to become this kind of leading part, this kind of, you know, hero image type thing. Definitely not capes, definitely not underpants over trousers, none of that. Definitely not saving the world, but more about the kind of unsung heroes in the background, the ones that do all the work and make all this magic happen, just quietly in the background. So that was where it kind of came from, and obviously the link with the Heather Robinson name, it just seemed the right sort of time, and so to get away from this capes and pants, this kind of ordinary hero bit was sort of born too, and to set us apart from, because hero is quite a generic name, so this ordinary hero came to the fore.
And what does it mean to you personally? Because, you know, it is your baby, you know, when you've got an agency, and a successful award-winning agency, but what does it mean to you personally to now step into that new era?
Well, it helps the imposter syndrome, that is for sure. It starts to sort of remove a lot of that, but it as I say, it's always been much bigger than me and my and just me as an individual and my name. It's always been about, as I say, these brilliant people. And they are brilliant, you know, they're all much better at what they do than I am at any of that stuff. So I admire all of them greatly. So it's actually more about them. So it's kind of a recognition piece for them, more so now.
Nice, yeah. And how does it signal the agency's evolution?
Well, there's no getting away from it. We've been around a while now, and it's a kind of coming of age. It's a recognition of that, you know, we have been around for a while. We intend to be around for, you know, a while yet, and therefore it's the kind of next chapter in that story. So we're not moving away from any of our sort of heritage of do one thing well. That still remains our ethos. All our values are bold, original, responsible and effective, all still the same. It's just a slight shift, really. It's a coming of age, I guess, and it's just in recognition of that, but keeping the good stuff and kind of moving forward, really.
So with that, what can clients expect from this new chapter, if anything?
Hopefully they will still feel that they're getting the level of service and drive and all the good stuff that we've always had as an agency. As I say, that will continue. Nothing is changing in that way. It's just a kind of step change, I guess, which hopefully they'll feel that energy and they'll feel that excitement that it's the start of a new chapter. The operational side will remain the same. As I say, it's really just a recognition of start of a new era, if you like, for us. A little bit fresher, a little bit bolder, but all the kind of the stuff that hopefully they consider the good stuff, the heritage side of it, and the whole, you know, what happens behind the scenes will continue. It's really just a sort of a fresh facelift, I guess.
So what does success look like for Ordinary Hero moving forward?
I think the whole industry is welcoming a move towards a bit more stability, and I'm hoping that is on its way. I think the economy is a bit challenging, as we all know at the moment, and on the back of COVID, that's not ideal or helpful for anybody. But there is definitely a sense of things being refreshed going forward, and I think, you know, everyone's grabbing onto that with you know, with both hands and with a bit of excitement, because there's a sense that, you know, hopefully that will start to move, you know, in the right direction, and businesses will feel more confident about what they're doing. I think there's a lot of restructuring happening at the moment with a lot of clients, and I think hopefully with the start of 2026 a lot of that will be done, and therefore everyone can sort of move forward in a fresh way. And I know we've talked about the year of the snake and the year of the horse, which I think is quite interesting, the Chinese New Year's, and year of the snake being the one we're just leaving, you know, in January 26. Say again.
Hurrah.
Hurrah is exactly right. I think everyone's feeling the same about that. Shaking off all the old, and then moving into the year of the horse, which, you know, represents a whole host of exciting things moving forward as well.
Yeah.
So I think that will, hopefully that's a sort of, another sort of significant sort of move as well.
Yeah, definitely. So leadership, legacy, and what's next? So from brand evolution to personal evolution. So leadership does shape everything, the culture, the work, the direction and the future. So how has your leadership style changed over the years?
I think coming from the larger agencies with huge teams and all the kind of admin really that goes with that, that was a very different management style, and I'd kind of grown up with that for a number of years. So coming back to, well, initially managing myself and then, which is a whole different ball game, and then managing obviously an internal team, but then obviously a much broader external team, meant that the management style had to kind of go with that, move with that. And I think, as I say, the model is a kind of business version of an event model anyway. So it's quite a familiar leadership style, because in my previous life I'd have been sort of, and still am, kind of executive lead, executive producer, or whatever it might be on various projects. So it's the same sort of role, and all the people that work with us are familiar with that leadership style. So it kind of works well in that way. As I say, I hope that we as a business remain fair leaders for all our partners that we work with. And I hope from a client perspective, they feel that there is a strong team of leaders here, not just with me, but the sort of head of department. So people like Nikki, or people like the tech lead, or the logistics lead, or whatever that might be, that they feel that that leadership is there in those roles as well.
And what kind of leader do you strive to be today?
Fair is probably the only way I could sort of put it, I guess. It's a journey for everybody. Everyone's got their own ambition and their own, day-to-day challenges that need to be accommodated as well. So it's about recognising all of that and trying to remain fair in an environment, a world environment, an economic environment that is continually at the moment kind of hurling challenges left, right and centre. So it's about trying to maintain that status quo and just trying to be as fair with everybody that you can be, I guess.
And then what legacy do you hope to build throughout Ordinary Hero moving forward?
Well, hopefully as a model it will be kind of recognised and adopted. And I think a lot of agencies, I'm not saying they've adopted our model as such, but I think a lot more are moving in that direction for the reasons we've said, commercial and otherwise. But hopefully it will always carry that sense of all that we've talked about, making sure that we're always creative, that we're always robust, that we're nice people to work with, all of those kind of things that hopefully the reason that clients keep coming back come for, that they're people they can trust.
And what excites you about the next chapter?
Not having to say I'm Heather Robinson from Heather Robinson will be a big plus. I think not just for me, but I think all the people that answer the phone. I think all the guys that used to have to wear crew shirts with my name on it, I've always felt bad about that. So I think that's all those are going to be big wins for everybody. On a slightly more strategic level, hopefully it will just help to reinforce that we as a business are continuing to evolve, we're continuing to move forward without losing any of that good stuff and heritage. Stuff.
And if you could give your younger self one piece of advice from year one, what would it be?
Maybe think a bit more about what you're going to call your business if ever you thought about setting one up. So you weren't doing quite on the hoof. I think, as we've said, this whole industry is built on people that are transient and move and evolve and are agile and kind of morph and all those sorts of things, shape-shifting type people. And I think the story of where this business came from, I think sums all of that up pretty accurately, that you kind of, it was born out of an unexpected moment. And I think that kind of is the industry. Things come out of the most odd places, and even if you plan everything, someone will move those goalposts over here and you're suddenly having to rethink the whole thing. So I think it's a sort of, it's a coming together of all those things.
Okay. So the industry, let's talk about that, because, you know, the then, the now, the next. So we zoom into that wider landscape of what we're all part of. So 17 years of events and creative. You know, you've had enough time to witness the change and dramatically, you know, the trends and expectations, the tech. I mean, gosh, I mean, it's changing every second, right? And then the culture and also the global landscape. We've touched on that earlier, you know, political to, you know, various other things. So how has the industry changed since you were in, you know, not necessarily just in Heather Robinson live communications back in the day, but way back when, you know, how has it evolved from when you first got the agency, in the agency world?
I think fundamentally, at its core, it's still the same. You've got a group of creatives wanting to build experiences for audiences that make a difference, are remembered, are effective, all of those good things. I think all of that still remains, and I think that is the sort of the red thread that runs through. I think it's got slightly more convoluted with kind of paperwork and box ticking and that sort of stuff, but I think the world has. I think that's just unfortunately what goes along with all of that. And I think it's inherited some challenges from things like Brexit, because let's not forget Brexit, which arrived long before COVID, and then the economy. So, you know, it's you feel like there's sort of wave after wave of stuff coming at an industry which is always hit quite hard, because it's sort of where things get cut quite quickly. So it's got to be quite a resilient business industry, but it's a massive industry, as we all know. But it's also quite a hidden industry, so unless you're in it, you're kind of maybe not aware of the sort of size scale and all that goes with it. But so I think all of that means that everyone has to keep evolving, as we've been talking about, to make sure they're always, you know, up to speed on all the bonkersness. And so that's why, you know, Nikki and her team, we were talking yesterday about things like Tom's and what's going to happen with all of that. And, you know, things are changing all the time, and they're still trying to sort out, you know, the trade things and all, you know, so it's an ongoing battle. So everything keeps moving. So all of the stuff around it, I think, will continue to change. And working overseas is harder since Brexit, as we all know. But the fundamentals haven't changed, which is, you know, coming up with a great concept, whatever that concept is for, and then delivering it in the most imaginative, creative, but robust and appropriate way.
And not forgetting Brexit, we've mentioned, or we've just mentioned, and how agile what was then Heather Robinson Limited, now Ordinary Hero. You set up an office.
Yeah, we set up Heather Robinson BV in the Netherlands, because most of our clients were pan-European clients, and most of our work was in mainland Europe. So we had to do something to combat, you know, what was potentially the most enormous hit on the UK working in mainland Europe.
And what shifts have had the biggest impact on your work?
That we've done, or that have had impacted on us? Impacted
on you.
I think the fact that we try and remain ahead of stuff means that so things like when COVID hit, we were, you know, quick to manage all the stuff around that, and to look at how we could manage or mitigate as much risk as we could around all of that. And I think clients recognise that sort of, you know, the fact that we'll try and go above and beyond to make sure that we're working for them to protect them as much as we could.
And that's still part of the DNA now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, we are part of their extended team. That's how we present ourselves. So our job is to make them look good, and our job is to protect them from, you know, mitigating risk basically.
Yeah.
So I think all of that sort of underpins that.
Yeah, okay. And what trends do you think are genuinely meaningful?
Specific to events.
Specific to events, yeah.
I think AI is the new buzzword, not just in events obviously, but it is, everyone's now talking about it and how it can be used in events, and I think that's going to be quite interesting to observe, because at the end of the day it's another tool.
Yeah.
And I was talking to a creative the other day, and they said, that they had noticed that some of their work had dropped off a bit because, agents were putting stuff into AI to create, experiences and stuff. And there is a role for AI, but Nikki will be delighted to hear I was doing some AI training the day before yesterday. And it was talking about the fact that you can't lose sight of the fact that it is pulling from a number of resources which may or may not be true or accurate.
Yeah.
So you've still got to have that personal, you've still got to have that human touch, and that you can't kind of bypass that, and you shouldn't bypass that, because we all know, whether it's an image, whether it's a piece of music, whatever it is, you can tell when something is AI generated or human generated, and it's intangible. Yeah. But it's definitely there or not there.
But equally, we're dealing with people, and we're a people business. So, I think it has its place for sure. But I think bringing people into a room,
and it's
to connect is as important
absolutely
as it is ever.
And the solution as well needs to have that human touch. It needs to have that. I use the word soul. I don't mean it particularly in a spiritual. It's spiritual rather than religious way. But it's that intangible human aspect.
Yeah, absolutely. And what trends do you think are less helpful? Because I'm sure there's some out there.
The short attention span. I think that is going to be a lifelong trend now, I think. And people might point at me and say I have a short one, which they're probably right. But I think that is a real challenge for everybody. Just retaining attention in a communication environment.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think the industry needs next?
I think it needs to just remember where it's come from, what its fundamental raison d'etre is. It's why it's here. It's here to create, experiences for people, whatever they look and feel like. And I think I do get a sense, as I say, it comes in waves where, there's sort of big stuff being built and big agencies buying up, and everyone's getting, it's all becoming these huge, great businesses again. And I quite like it when there's a lot of smaller, and they don't have to be tiny, they can be mid-sized, but smaller, quite exciting businesses doing sort of stuff rather than these huge, great industries, as I say, of which I've been part, as have you, and I just think there's something a bit more exciting about when there's a number of sort of different things, but that's personal opinion. I mean, it's not everyone's opinion.
And where do you think Ordinary Hero fits into the future of the MICE landscape? And for those people who don't understand what MICE means, it's meetings, incentives, conference and events. That's what that stands for. Where do you think Ordinary Hero fits into that landscape? I'm
hoping that we will retain our position of what people sort of know us for and that we're known for in the industry. But I'm also hoping that we continue to sort of buck the trend a bit, and continue to be different and not the same as others, and just nice people to work with would be what I'd say. We work with nice partners and nice people, and that's how we want to be known. We want to be people they enjoy working with.
Yeah. And also, like you say, going back to the Ordinary Hero and the name and where that originates from and what it means to you, essentially we're there to provide a service to make the clients look good. You know, we're not there to, you know, be in conflict with or take the glory. We are that unsung hero of being just ordinary people coming together in that team build environment, making, you know, A to Z things just happen and disappearing, really. And, you know, hopefully having then made from that brief on the table that connection and that red thread all the way through to then those, you know, the audience being in there, taking those messages on, and then delivering whatever that business or whatever that message is back to that business to get the value, because that's essentially what you're buying.
Absolutely right.
So the last word in has got a quick fire round this time.
Okay,
just
brilliant.
for you, Heather.
My short attention span.
To bring the spirit of the podcast together, 5 quick fire. Sit tight.
Okay, ready?
One misconception people have about you.
Oh. I think one. They might think I'm quite scary, and I'm not. All right. Or actually, you can have 2. They might think I'm a bit stupid, and I'm not.
I love that. And the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Actually, it's a quote that one of the clients said to me, which is, "These are hands, not ones," and I think that's a great takeout.
That is good.
You know, we will do everything we can, but we haven't quite worked out the miracles just yet.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
And things do go
do.
wrong. And it's about, actually, we had a client not so long ago, or quite recently actually, saying, you know, it's about how you handle what goes wrong.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's inevitable. Tech, this, that, the other. It's about
a
how
live
you handle it.
environment.
It's a live environment, for sure. One thing that you'll never compromise on?
Probably safety, which I know sounds a very kind of odd thing to say, but it encompasses everything. I'm very risk averse, as Nikki will tell you on a daily basis. But I think it's wise to be, whether it's on every level. It's about mitigating risk.
One word to describe your 17-year journey?
Roller coaster.
And finally, what's the last word for anyone out there building something of their own?
JFDI.
Yeah, totally agree with that. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the episode of The Last Word In with Heather. So thank you, Heather. It's been an absolute pleasure for sharing your story, for your honesty, for the new chapter and the exciting things that's going to bring. Definitely, Year of the Horse. We're all on that horse, aren't we? And for everyone listening, stay tuned for more conversations, for the Dig Deeper, Challenge the Norm, and the Celebrate the people behind the extraordinary work that we do. So thank you again. And this is The Last Word In, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.